Hello and welcome back to the Last Place Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your co-host Ethan, joined once again by Ryan, and today we're talking about a very important fantasy subject, that is therapizing ourselves from the season. Ryan?
Yes, this is the fantasy therapy session show.
Yep.
So we are going to be going through four steps.
One day
Now I'm
eventually.
not okay. I am not a professional
We'll,
therapist. I
no,
want
no,
to say this.
we need to get a couch, Ryan, and we'll bring it to the studio that we're gonna totally have because we're gonna be rich men, and we can lay out on the couch and have little cams open.
Yes, yeah,
Because
and we will eventually. But we're going to be going through some of our biggest regrets of this year. We're going to be trying to cope with them and look at some of the positives
yeah,
that we've
some of
had.
us are going to try and
And
cope.
then we're gonna look at this upcoming year, and we're gonna be going through like just looking at some of the positives that and some of the hopefuls that we have for this upcoming 2024 season. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with regrets. I know Josh is not here, but I will be putting some of his answers in here, and we're gonna be just discussing them. But we'll go ahead and start off with me. The big question, first off, biggest 2023 rookie draft regret. I've got two of them.
Mm.
I've got two of them. Quentin Johnston and Bryce Young. I could have literally the next pick from Bryce Young was CJ Stroud. I should have just taken him. But
Yep.
yeah, I decided not to. And same with Quentin Johnston. I mean, there was
Which which
Jordan Addison,
boo
Zay
on you.
Flowers,
Hold on.
Tank Dell, all of
Boo
them
boo
had
on
much
you,
better
Ryan,
seasons.
because I told you to take CJ over
I
Bryce.
know.
I said if
I
I'm
know.
taking a
I
quarterback,
know.
I'm taking CJ, and everybody was giving me
Yep.
the business for it.
I
But I said
know.
I'm
I
taking
know.
CJ. CJ will be
And
the better quarterback in the
and
NFL.
that's why he's my biggest regret this year is
He should be.
picking Bryce over CJ because I mean I already have it's not like I was lacking at quarterback because my quarterbacks are fantastic. I mean they had
Well,
injuries
yeah, and then
this
all
year,
three of them
but
got hurt, and you were the fantasy championship with what was it, the Vikings backup
yeah, yeah.
when you could have
And
had
guess what?
CJ
He scored
Stroud.
negative. He had negative points, and I still won the
Yeah,
championship.
and you could have had CJ Stroud,
But,
but whatever.
but I gotta say, like, even though I regret it, I'm okay with it. I mean, it's a big regret for me for last season, mainly because I'm going into this year with like no rookie talent, no second year talent. It's all people from like 2 years ago. So, like, the only rookie talent that I have, um, and really it's not even rookie talent, is Ty Chandler. So that's it. That's all I got. So I'm really hoping to bring in a good stable of rookies this year, in the 2024 rookie draft.
I am not
But
for that, Ryan.
Quentin Johnston really hurt me. I thought he was going to do better. I didn't think he was going to be great, but to be honest, I'm not very hopeful. I mean, it's sub 500 yard season, and that's with like high snap percentages too. Like he was out on the field a lot, but he just was not getting the ball. And with Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen, all of them are contracted through the 2024 season. It's hard to see him doing well next year or even the year after. So I he's going to just sit on my bench or in my taxi squad this year. And I really I want to sit on him, but I also want to drop him because I'm not seeing a whole lot of talent there, not seeing a whole lot of hopefulness, coming from, what I saw this year. So I'm hoping with a new head coach, he might be able to make a splash, but honestly, he's going to sit in my taxi squad at least for the next year. And honestly, same with Bryce. Bryce might sit in my taxi squad. So those are kind of the two that I had. So what is your biggest 2023 rookie draft regret?
I really only had one for me because I liked my rookies otherwise.
Yeah,
Um, but the one thing I regretted was not taking Puka, which I feel like a lot of
yeah,
people can say, so it's not like a big boo on me. But
yep.
I had the 501. I took Sam Howell, could have taken Puka, and
Mm,
I was joking about it on our draft live stream of like I'm gonna take Puka here, and just didn't.
yeah,
Um, I went against it. Now I don't regret it for like the end of my life or whatever, like because I ended up flipping Sam Howell into Dallas Goddard, which is a tight end that I really needed. So
yeah.
it worked out in the end, so it wasn't a big thing. But having
It
Puka would have,
wasn't a huge loss. Yeah,
yeah, having him would have been more of a help than what Dallas Goddard was. So,
yeah,
um, yeah,
yeah,
and especially because where my team struggled was right at the beginning of the season, and then like the last game, the last like two games. So having that like extra boost from Puka, who knows? Who knows what could have
yeah.
happened?
Who knows what could have happened? Honestly, like if you would have had Puka, I'm sure that would have changed a lot of games for you, especially early on in the season.
Yeah. Well, I
But
know it was early on because all my early on losses were by like 1 to 5 points.
yeah, and that would have changed the game for you.
So
So I get that. That's a big thing. And from what Josh sent me, Josh's biggest regret was also Puka.
yeah, it
So
should be everyone.
because
If you did
he
not get Puka, that is your
yeah,
regret.
yeah, and because he traded, so the trade that he made last year was with my dad, Paul. So he traded the 20 no, he traded the 207 and the 208, which was Tyjae Spears and Puka, for the 203, which ended up being Zay Flowers. Now, I gotta say,
Yeah,
Zay
but Zay,
Flowers is a good addition,
yeah,
so it's not a complete loss, but you are losing Puka and what could be the starting running back for the Titans this year. So that would be a big loss if that was the case. But so I get that. That's not a great trade. In the end, it didn't look like a great trade.
right.
So all right, so let's go on. So who you wished you traded last year?
You want me to start first?
So, I'll actually go ahead and take this. So I have two on my list. These two kind of hurt me this year, but they also kind of helped me. Ramondre Stevenson and Tony Pollard.
I want to say one thing before you continue. It's so
Yeah,
funny I saw that you had put those on the wish you had traded because when you needed them to do well, they did and won you
yeah,
games that you had to have. And when basically the games didn't matter and they were on your team,
yeah,
like it was just like, okay, they're there, but it
yeah.
didn't make much of a
But
difference.
they were scoring like seven
Yeah, like
points,
yeah, like
9 points,
nine
and I'm
double
like,
points.
I'm
But you
sitting
didn't
there
need
just
them.
doing this
But
the
but
whole freaking
in
time.
all of your had to have it games, like specifically Tony Pollard was
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, and same with Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was literally like
Yeah,
well,
dead weight.
I should
He
say
was dead weight.
pre-Miami Tyreek Hill, where he was like score 50 points and then score like 10, and then score like 30 points and then score like 5. So, you know, it was hit or miss, but like Ramondre Stevenson, I don't have a whole lot of hope. I know he was injured at the
Mhm.
end of the season. Um,
I
but the
mean, maybe
addition
with
of
the coaching
Ezekiel,
change.
yeah, with the coaching change, it might help him. But with the addition of Ezekiel Elliott, I think it really hurt Ramondre this year. I really think it did. Um, and it all boils down, his value boils down to what do the Patriots do with the number 3 pick? Do they pick a quarterback or do they go elsewhere? So, it all depends on that. And if they can get their passing game going, I think their running game will benefit from that, obviously. But, post Belichick, we've got what, Jared Mayo as the head coach.
Mhm.
So I don't know if he's going to change the scheme drastically. I think he's going to make changes, but I don't think he's going to change the scheme drastically enough in his first year to majorly affect Ramondre. So I'm hoping he just stays healthy and that he gets the touches that he needs to produce. So, Tony Pollard, uh, he's a headache right now for me because Derrick Henry is a favorite to come to Dallas. And if that happens,
Tony's
Tony Pollard becomes a very valuable handcuff, but he's not going to see the field a lot. I
yeah,
mean, he's going to get touches, but he's not going to get a lot. He's going to become what Tyjae Spears was last year for the Titans.
right.
So, it kind of pains me to see it. I'm hoping that if they do bring in Henry, that they will get rid of Tony Pollard. Say he goes to somewhere like the Texans or Carolina, somewhere like that, where he can be utilized in his skill set. So, who knows? But those are my two biggest like regrets. The wish that I had traded away last year and got, the value that they had at the end of last season. Because Tony Pollard was at like the top of the list for like people to be traded last year. So yeah, those are the two that I wish I had traded. What about you? What do you have?
There's not a ton on my team that was really, like tradable, but for me it was DK. Just trying to find out something for DK. Like if I had the forethought of trying to get like something like Puka or something like, oh man, the beginning of last season. Let's see here. Let's look at our final leaders. I don't care about ADP. ADP is garbage. I mean, if I had the forethought, so like yeah, like a DK for Puka, like a DK for shoot, I don't know, like DJ Moore,
Yeah.
something like that. That would have been more of a boost than what he was.
Yeah,
Uh,
because DK has been kind of underwhelming
yeah,
the
I mean,
last
I have the
couple of
stats
years,
right
really.
here. So, 66 receptions for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, but he only had 2 games above 20 points.
Yeah,
And, that just adds up. And he's just been on a steady decline since 2020. So he went from 7 to 14 to wide receiver 16 to now wide receiver 21.
yeah,
So I don't know if he's on just a constant regression or if he's regressed and now it's time to go back to the means and, he can break back into like that top 12.
yeah,
But I know this year it really hurt me to only have Pittman doing work on my
yeah,
team
yeah. And
until I had Tank.
that's
But,
yeah, and you got Tank Dell, and he's gonna be a huge asset this year. Honestly, your wide receiver core is pretty good. I'm I'm jealous. I mean, and I've got a solid wide receiver core of my own.
I'm
So
jealous. I only have CD Lamb, so
no, for real. Like I like the possibility of Tank Dell with CJ Stroud. That's solid. That's solid right there. And having Pittman. So yeah, I like it. Um,
on paper.
so on paper, if it works out, then cool. Um, but let's go on to Josh. Josh wrote down here that people he wished he had traded were Kyler and Purdy. Purdy, I I mean, I get, but Kyler, I really understand. Like Kyler, I think he's
Nobody was touching that.
yeah, nobody was gonna touch Kyler. I mean,
And he was
I
asking,
don't I wouldn't want Kyler just because I don't see a
"Hey,
whole lot of hope
Kyler's
with
totally
him.
worth Kyler's totally worth a first round pick, if you want him."
Yeah, I'd see I don't see
Mm,
Kyler as being worth a lot. Purdy, on the other hand, I think for the next at least year or two, I think
he's worth some mid
he could
rounds.
be worth it. But, I think he is, and this is a little controversial of me to say, but I think he is a product of the system he's in. I think he's benefited a lot from the system he's in,
Yeah, but
and I
if you
think his
always
stats
make the
show it.
you always make the right play,
Yeah.
Tom Brady,
So, yeah.
doesn't
And
matter what
and
system.
yeah, of course. And I think he is a product of that Shanahan system and the people that he has around him. I think he is very good at what he does,
Yeah.
but we'll see like when all of that breaks down around him because they have a lot of like money issues in San Francisco right now. They have a very expensive team and they're going to have to get rid of key pieces over the next couple of years. So we'll see if Purdy keeps up this level of play, he could end up being very good. But, as it deteriorates over the next couple of years with players leaving, like key players leaving, you know, we could see a decline from Purdy. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about.
Yep.
But so those are the people that I wished and Josh wished and Ethan wished that we traded. Let's
Impact
do
bench player.
least impact bench player. For me, I was hopeful from the end of last season for Jeff Wilson to, do it again. I mean, he was utilized. I loved it, and he was in my starting roster at the end of last season, because he was actually doing well. But since they drafted Achan, he kind of went by the wayside.
Yeah.
And
See,
honestly, I would not be surprised if by draft time he's not on my roster
yeah.
because he is almost completely useless
Yeah,
unless
you
Achan.
gotta worry about cutting all these players. That's the joy of not
Yeah,
having picks. I don't have to cut anyone.
yeah. See yeah, that's true. But I mean, if I don't see any value in him, I'm gonna cut him.
Laugh through the
So
pain.
like,
Laugh through the pain, Ryan.
yeah, no. So Jeff Wilson, I'm letting go. I'm done with him. Unless something drastic happens, I'm letting him go by the draft. So, what is your least impact bench player? So like
I had
somebody who
I
didn't
had
really
two,
impact your team very much.
two of my least impactful bench players that I was at least hopeful of were Tyler Algier and Chris Godwin.
Mm,
So, I mean, obviously you saw the overshadow of Bijan.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, Algier still had a couple of good games. Like if you caught him on his four good games, you were happy to have him, but the other 13 weren't great of like 9-point finishes. And it's frustrating because I feel like a lot of what happened at Atlanta was just coaching issues. It's just
yeah,
bad play calling all year, which is why Arthur Smith lost his job. But yeah, that hurt to
yeah,
to have so much potential in a running back, over 1,000 yard rusher, and
yeah,
just throw him in the bin. But my other player was Chris Godwin, and this is a stat that thank you, Josh. Shout out to him. But he had his second highest targets in his career, but it was his third worst fantasy finish. So 130 targets, 83 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and only two touchdowns. I think this was just one of those years for Chris Godwin where he was adjusting to a new quarterback. Mike Evans is on his way out. I think Chris Godwin is always going to be the consistent until he retires. I think he's kind of like a Larry Fitz. He's obviously not Larry Fitz. Don't take that out of context. He's not Larry Fitzgerald, the second best wide receiver to ever touch football, which is statistically. Um, but he's just that consistent guy. That's just who Chris Godwin is. So I'm hoping that this next year he kind of rebounds because those 2 touchdowns is rough, and only
Yeah.
catching half of your passes also, or a little bit under half of his passes, is rough. So and it hurts you in fantasy. But
Yeah, that
at
would
the
be
end of the year,
something
you look
that,
like a stud. So
yeah. And that would be something that I would look into, like into his stats and like see why he only caught, less than half of his passes and only 2 touchdowns. Like, is
well,
it
a lot of
scheme?
it was on
Is
Baker.
it,
Because I watched
yeah,
a lot of
okay.
Tampa Bay games. A lot of it was Baker, just missing
Just
him.
not
Yeah.
throwing accurate passes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean,
It was a
Chris
Mariota
Godwin,
Drake.
I mean, he was, yeah,
Not
I
as
mean,
bad
he's used to Tom Brady throwing him passes for the
that
last
are
couple
on
of
the
years.
money.
So, yeah, that are on the money. So, I get that. I get that. And it may have been an adjustment period, but I'm a little concerned with age there because I
He's
mean,
27.
he's not up there, but he's been in the league for what, 6 years now?
Let me tell you right now.
So,
Our
we
good
could
friend Chris Godwin has been in the league for 7 years. He is 27.
7 years. So, I mean, he's not necessarily at risk for concern,
No,
um,
he's probably got
for like the aging out, but yeah, he's probably got about at least 3 more years, maybe 4, if he doesn't get too banged up. But we're he's reaching that prime wide receiver age, so we could see good things out of him.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would hold on to him. I would hold on to him.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just saying I was disappointed in him this year.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not gonna do
and
anything
I hope that he gets
drastic.
back to.
Not gonna do anything crazy, but
Yeah,
I was
I hope
just
he gets back to his normal production because he was a very good wide receiver.
yeah.
So,
Or he was
um,
impactful. Our biggest disappointment is next.
yeah. So, let's go on to our least impact
No,
bench
that's
player for Josh. Sorry, for
oh
Josh.
yeah, for Josh. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I just did that.
but Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, he was talking
That's
big game.
understandable.
He was talking big game on Dotson going into the season.
Yeah, yeah. He had a lot to say on
I
Dotson, and
reminded him
honestly,
that Washington.
yeah,
Uh,
I was hopeful for Dotson.
oh no,
I
I
had
was
him in a
too.
couple of leagues too.
But I also had
And
that realism on my shoulders of like
yeah,
Washington. Like I'd love for him
but
to do
but
that.
also like I mean with how Sam Howell was tossing that football around, I was hoping that Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin would be able to eat.
No,
And it just wasn't coming in for Jahan Dotson. It wasn't happening for him.
it
So
wasn't really happening for anyone on Washington.
yeah. But I mean, good stats from Sam Howell. I'm surprised. Like he was a top 5 quarterback
For a good
until
amount of time.
like what, week 14, week 13?
Yeah, something like that.
Like he was like a top 5 quarterback. I was so surprised. So sorry. But I was so surprised that nobody was really performing other than him. And I don't know. I was just very surprised by it. But let's go on to our biggest disappointment. Mine was Javante Williams. Honestly, was very, very disappointed. I traded for him last year. Actually, I want to go back and see Javante Williams on my team. Because I know I traded Josh Jacobs for him. So I traded Josh Jacobs. Oh no, it was 2022, so it was 2 years ago. I traded Josh Jacobs and I think it's Damian Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah. for Javonte Williams, a 2023 first and a 23 third. Going back, how do you think how do you think
Scammed.
that trade went?
Scammed.
Who won?
Wait, sorry. Did you get the first round pick?
I
And who?
got the first and Javonte for Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris.
Who'd you take with that pick? Was it
Um,
Johnson? If it's Quentin Johnson, you got
I
scammed.
think it was either Quentin Johnson or
Or
Bryce
Bryce.
Young.
I think either way, you
Yeah,
got scammed.
yeah. For Josh Jacobs, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was just me taking advantage because
If
that
you turn
year
that
was
into like
also
CJ, so that's really
yeah, but
on paper
but
you won, but
also
then when you actually drafted, you
yeah, yeah.
because if you had
And
gone CJ or somebody else with that pick, oh,
yeah.
you won. You won.
But going back, um that year that I traded, this was a mid-season trade. This was in October. When I traded it, or when I traded Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams had just gone in for an injury. So he was out for the
Yeah,
season.
that was his
So I didn't
ACL.
have him for 2022. Josh Jacobs went on to
To be
be
the
the rushing leader that year and almost take Tyler to a championship. So that I really think I lost on that. I
yeah.
think that was like one of my worst trades. So, he did not really perform this year. He was a big disappointment for me. I mean, sub 1,000 yard rusher, only 3 touchdowns. That's it. I mean, his one saving grace was that he had 47 receptions. So, and 2 touchdowns in like receiving
Now they're
touchdowns.
still building Denver, so it might not be hopeless. Is all I'll
It
say.
might not be hopeless, but also they have that backup that actually he looked really good out there. I can't remember his name, but he looked really good at the beginning of the season. Didn't really utilize him down the road too much, but that kind of concerns me for Javante. I think Javante is a solid rusher, but I think he's lacking confidence right now, especially after his injury in 2022. So who knows? Like he might do better this year, but this was the first year back from his ACL injury. So I'm hoping this off season he gets healthy again and he goes back and he just absolutely just destroys. Um, but he was a big disappointment for me. What about you? Who do you have?
We're bringing him up again, but it's DK. DK is very, very obviously my biggest disappointment.
Yeah,
I expected so much more out of him than wide receiver 21 and only getting over 20 points twice.
yeah,
He's supposed to be wide receiver one over there, and really what it comes down to is Gino. He's not the guy. He held the ship, but he's not their quarterback, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Like he wasn't horrible, but he's just not their guy. Um, and they need somebody that can get DK the ball because that's their guy. DK and
yeah,
JSN are their guy. And when you have someone who's primarily targeting Tyler Lockett and then you can't get in the playoffs and you're trying to figure out
yeah,
what's going on, it's like, well, you have a superstar in DK and you're hardly using him. So
yeah.
I
And
don't know. That
now
might just be
you have
me.
JSN too.
Yeah.
So,
And it
it's
could
kind
just be
of
me, but that's
yeah,
my thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks. And you're right, they do have JSN, but your pecking order should be all right. We have JSN in the slot. If DK's not open. That's where we're going.
yeah, yeah. And who knows? Lockett might not be there this year. He might end up trying to retire or even like at the end of this upcoming year. So he's getting close to retirement now.
Right.
But yeah, I get that. Can be he's very frustrating. He's always been very frustrating for me. That's why I've never had him on my team. It's just I don't like the up and down. But who knows with Pete Carroll not being there this year, a major coaching change. with Seattle could, in fact, boost DK.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we'll see.
yeah. So, moving on to Josh's biggest disappointment, which I think is really funny because it's AJ Brown is his biggest disappointment. But he traded, it's a mid-season trade. He traded AJ Brown.
Well, it was no. Hey, do it justice. It was the trade deadline week.
Yeah, the trade deadline week, and it was right before playoffs because we always do our trade deadline right before playoffs. And it was AJ Brown, 2024 second, 2025 first for Jalen Waddle and James Cook.
So
And
Ryan, I
that
think I hit
hurt
Josh.
him.
I think I hurt Josh with the fattest bait and switch of all time. When I told him that I was looking at AJ because I needed wide receiver help and freaked
Yeah,
him out, I might have
yeah.
killed Josh's team.
Yeah, because I mean his stats in the postseason,
We're bad. They were bad.
week 15, 10 points. Week 16, 14 points. Week 17, the championship, 9 points.
Yep.
Like he struggled hardcore in the postseason. And even in the last the last like 6 games of the regular season,
Yeah,
he
he was having a hard
really
time.
he really had a hard time. Those first couple of games, um, he just absolutely dominated
So
at the
Tyler
beginning of the
sold
season.
high. Tyler sold
Yeah,
high. Good on him. But Josh,
yeah,
oh boy.
yeah. And James Cook and Jalen Waddle, those have to hurt. I
Yeah.
mean, have to hurt because James
I mean,
Cook
mostly
looked
James Cook.
fantastic in the postseason.
Yeah.
So,
It was
yeah,
mostly James Cook that hurts.
yeah,
But think about week 16 and 17, James Cook, he kind of struggled too.
yeah,
It wasn't like
yep.
matter of fact, while you're talking, I'll pull it up.
Okay. But yeah, I I feel for him. I had AJ Brown and I didn't last. I had AJ Brown in a different league and I got knocked out of the playoffs in the second round. So
So
I
week
understand his pain.
so week one of the playoffs was his biggest game. So this was right after Josh traded him. That was his 44-point game against Dallas. But for the semifinal, he got 7 against the Chargers and 8 against New England.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
rough.
you're thinking about it in the ship context, it didn't hurt him, but
Yeah.
maybe going forward it hurts him. AJ Brown's
I think it hurts him going
I
forward.
don't I think it really does, especially with AJ Brown pretty much saying he doesn't want to be on the Eagles anymore and that
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is, you know, like trash. But
Yeah.
yeah. I-
Yeah. So those are kind of our biggest disappointments this year. They're big ones. But let's go on. We're
Potentially
transitioning.
lasting ones
Let's transition
to
from,
positive.
some of
Yeah.
the regrets that we had last year
We're gonna end
to
on
some
positive.
positive. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's go to a positive note and we're gonna end on a few positive notes here. Just to
We're
give
gonna
us a
cope,
little hope.
Ryan.
Yeah,
It's
give
no,
us a little
we're
hope
gonna
for
cope.
this.
No, no, not hope. We're coping
We're
with some.
coping with what happened last year. I mean, it ended well for me, but we're gonna
Mhm.
cope with what happened last year
You got the happy ending.
and on some hope for this upcoming year. Um, so the questions that I have, the first one is, who carried you through the regular season? I know who carried me through. That was my wide receiving core.
Yeah,
My wide receiving
Sun God
core,
and CD.
Sun
I'll
God,
take the question for you.
CD, yep, Sun God, CD, and then Trey McBride helped me out.
Yeah,
And the emergence of Raheem Mostert, which I didn't that was his stats weren't completely different from Tony Pollard. They were similar in most aspects. But the big difference was I didn't expect this from Raheem Mostert.
yeah.
He was going to ride my bench and be like a bye week sub again. But he ended up being a starter for a majority of the season because he produced
Yeah,
in the games that he was in. So I'm really surprised at what Raheem Mostert did overall throughout the season. He was gone for a couple of weeks, but I think he helped carry me through with Ramondre struggling through most of the year. I think Raheem Mostert subbed him in or subbed himself in for my team and really helped me out. But my saving graces, my shining jewels on my team were by far CD Lamb and Sun God.
yeah.
So they oh they
For
saved
me,
me. Yeah.
for me, the
So
church,
uh, oh, the church. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
church and Pittman
ETN.
were my two shining jewels. For ETN, he started kind of slow, but he got me points when I needed them, which was in the middle of the season. Kind of engines went out a little bit and were up and down at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I mean, over 1,000 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns, 58 receptions. All of that
Yeah.
was helpful. Jacksonville's got some identity stuff to figure out, but I still like him going forward. I still think he's
Yeah.
really explosive and no one's challenging him whatsoever. So I still feel really good about him. Hopefully he can, bump up a little bit from running back 3 to running back 2, maybe maintain some consistency.
Yeah.
But then Pittman, who was just the reception monster, like
Yep.
he, I knew he was always good for 20. And that is such a good feeling when you're like,
Yep.
oh man, who do I have left to play? I'm down 5 points. Oh, it's Pittman game. Like
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of how I felt about Amon
oh, let me
Ra.
let me watch the first quarter and he's gonna have 5 receptions.
Yeah.
So um I loved having Pittman. I was really big on Pittman for a long time, and so this was kind of his first year where he showed it. And granted, it's only wide receiver 13, so it's not like we need to be up in arms and doing
Yeah.
crazy dances in the street. But um,
You also
him,
got to say
him
like his
and that
his wide
rookie
rec-
QB
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
electric, even better than he was with Gardner, which is saying
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And Anthony Richardson coming back could be a huge boost for him
Yeah,
because not only will defenses have to guard him, but they'll have to guard against the run from Anthony Richardson
and
and
JT,
and JT. So that's gonna be hard, man. That's gonna be hard for defenses to have to
Indy,
work through
yeah,
that.
Indy's gonna be a rough team.
Indy's gonna be dangerous. So I I think Pittman is a very solid wide receiver going forward.
Yeah.
And we'll see how this upcoming season does for him, just with Anthony Richardson, obviously being out most of last year. He's been healing up. Hopefully, he doesn't lose any of that confidence that he had at the beginning of the season. But I have high expectations for Pittman. So yeah. So is there anybody else for you that you sees that carried you through the season?
No, that's really it. No, but I
Uh,
mean, you could argue Tank,
okay.
but it was kind of short-lived.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That was kind of short-lived, and he kind of split with Nico,
and
for a
same thing with
majority of the
Jameer
season. They
Gibbs.
kind of
Like
went
it
back
was
and
up
forth.
and down, kind of short-lived. I wouldn't say they
Yeah,
carried like ETN and
yeah.
Pittman did.
But I have a feeling Gibbs will carry you through next season.
Hmm.
I think
I
he'll
know,
really
and
be a
he
boon
was
for
he was
you.
up and offered for trades at the end of the season, and nobody took him. And boo on all of you
What,
guys.
Gibbs?
Yeah,
Wait, when?
at at the trade deadline, Gibbs was out there. Tyler asked for way too much.
Oh
I
God, I
offered him
didn't.
to you and said I needed a wide receiver, and you said, "Oh, we'll talk after the season." And yeah,
Yeah,
but now
yeah.
Gibbs is
I
the
don't
man.
know.
Gibbs is
I
the
don't
man.
know. I don't know if I could have given up like one of my top wide receivers though, because they carried me.
No,
So
hey, that you do what you got to do for your team, but Gibbs is
yeah.
he's not available. Don't call for him.
All right, that's fine. So going on to Josh, people that carried Josh through the regular season. This should be obvious to you, Ethan. What is his number one?
Yeah, CMC.
CMC, obviously. Like CMC was his team. I mean, it honestly, his shining jewel
He was only beat
was CMC.
he was only beat one time with CMC, and that was in the championship.
Yep.
His only other loss
And
was to me, but he that was on CMC's bye.
yeah, wow. So I was the only one to beat him. Cool.
Hmm.
That's awesome.
At
Yeah,
full steam.
so yeah, at full string. But
Ashley almost did it. Ashley all she was 2 points away from doing it, but
but she didn't.
she did not.
So, you know, this man, oh my gosh, 272 carries, 1,400 yards,
Jesus.
67 receptions for 700 yards,
Jesus Christ.
and 21 total touchdowns.
That's
I,
wrong.
that's just
That's
oh my
wrong.
gosh. Those stat lines are just crazy. Absolutely crazy. And he ended as
You traded him
RB1.
away, Ryan.
Yep. I
You
traded
made
him away.
Josh's team what it is.
Yeah, I traded him away. That's all right. I'm fine with it. But
All these bad
he
trades
also
are
had
revolving around you, Ryan. You wanna comment on
hey,
that?
I still stand on my Brees Hall trade. I still think that's a fantastic trade.
He was huge
So
in the playoffs. I had him in
and
the IDP league, and he carried me to this.
and hey, I kind of fleeced Josh with the Jalen Waddle, Debo Samuel for Amon
Oh, yes,
Ra and
ungotten CD. That was bad.
CD.
Yeah, that
So I kind of
was
fleeced him on that one. But you know, I've had some good trades. I've had some bad trades. That's how fantasy football
more bad
works.
than good,
So
but
like, I mean, a couple more bad than good. That's fine. I'm all right with that. But he also had Alvin Kamara, which I mean, he showed up,
yeah, when
especially
he
with
came back,
receptions
he was like
in the
Pittman.
passing game.
He was
Yeah,
exactly like Pittman. Like, oh, who do I have left? And I need 20 points. Kamara, ball game.
yeah. Well, because he had that solid foundation of getting those receptions every single
He
week,
got so many.
and
That was his entire
so
point.
many. Yeah, like he had so many receptions throughout the year. So, you know, uh seeing
But
him produce
didn't he shut off
consistently,
at the end?
yeah, he
I'm
kind
gonna look
of
it
he
up.
kind of dropped off a little bit. But I know he had like
Yeah.
5 or 6 weeks straight of like 22 plus performances or
So
20 plus performances.
yeah, so funny enough, it was in the semifinals and ship. Everything was good until week 16 and 17, and it was 10 points and 8 points to end the year. So
Yeah,
basically, Josh
yeah.
Josh had the monster
Worst
squad
luck.
from Space Jam,
Yeah,
and then it was right there at the end of the game when you needed him most, and they just got beaten by the Looney Tunes.
yeah. They crapped the bed. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can have
But
that, Ryan. You are the Looney Tune,
yeah,
and
I am the Looney Tunes.
that's not a
Call
bad.
me Bugs Bunny.
Yep,
No, but so he also had Devo Samuel and Chris Olave, both solid wide receivers.
Olave
They
was
produced
great.
a lot this year. Wide receiver 15 and 16. So I mean they weren't top 10 wide receivers, but they did produce fairly consistently for
Olave
him.
had some
Um,
monster performances at the end of the year.
yeah, he did.
Not
He
at the
did.
beginning,
And
but at the end of the year, he was.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised he only got up to wide receiver 16.
It's
I
because of
thought
the
he was
start.
a top 10.
Nah, it was because of the start of the year. Um,
But yeah,
let's see, Olave. So Olave, or I guess it was week 4, 5. That's when he slowed down. So he had 22, 15, 20, slowed
yeah,
down to 1 and 9, then 16 and 12. Week 8, another regression of 9, then 16, 21, then by week 21, 18, 12, 25 for, or no, he was injured for the first round of the playoffs. And then
yeah,
25 for second round, 5 points in the ship.
yeah.
So missing a game on top of having a bad shit performance, and then week 4, week 5, week 8, bad performances.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's gotta hurt. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's stay hopeful.
Okay.
We're going to talk
Yeah,
about the
let's stay
playoffs.
hopeful. Stay
We're going to
hopeful.
talk about the
Okay.
playoffs. Who helped you,
Yeah,
Ryan?
let's say who helped
Who
me in the playoffs.
who helped you?
I want
Give
you
up
to answer this.
names.
I want you to answer this. Who was my
You-
saving grace in the
It was
playoffs?
CD. It was very obviously CD Lamb and Brees Hall. That's it.
It was this okay, CD Lamb was
Those
an
are the
obvious
two
one.
people that helped you in
But
the playoffs. CD Lamb and
yeah,
Brees Hall.
but I had Brees Hall down because he surprised the heck out of me with his week 16 and 17 performances. I mean, 15 was lackluster. He only had 4 points, but somehow I made it through. But
Because of
16,
CD. Because CD
week
scored like 40
16,
points every
I
week in
know,
the playoffs.
but week 16, 48 points.
Yeah.
This man had 12 receptions on 16 targets for 96 yards, and that's just receiving. And then he had another 20 carries on 95 or for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Absolute beast. And then in the championship, he scored another 31 points.
Yeah.
Absolute monster in the playoffs. And he saved my butt when it comes to facing Josh. Absolutely saved my butt. So I, oh, I'm so glad I got him, and he is going to be on my team for a long time. I'm hoping,
Mhm.
especially with this whole Aaron Rodgers thing going on. If he actually ever comes back and he doesn't hurt himself on the first play of the regular season again. So,
Aaron Rodgers
you know,
2024 season highlights.
yeah, he drops back and then snap. So,
Oh, his legs break.
yeah. No, but like if Aaron Rodgers comes back, I have a lot of hope for Brees Hall because I think it's going to stretch the field for him, and I think it's going to make it easier for him to run over defenses. So
Yep.
I I'm really hopeful for him this year. But that's my saving grace in the playoffs. Him and CD. What about you?
Mine was Gibbs. Um,
Okay.
I was short-lived in the playoffs on some BS, but
Yeah.
Gibbs week 15 against Denver, 11 carries, 100 yards, a tutty, 2 receptions, 8 yards, and a receiving tutty. Um,
Yo,
so that was huge for my
little
league that I
Gibby.
went on to win. His week
We're not
16.
talking about your league.
All right, well, I'm just saying. Week 16, he was huge again, 27 points, 15 carries, 80 yards, 2 tutties, and then 4 receptions for 20 yards.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
And the
Honestly,
shifty
watching
wasn't
him work
as
in the
good,
in the
but
postseason.
that was just one of those. It was Monty's game in the red zone,
Yeah.
and that's what hurt him. He just didn't get any
Yeah.
red zone work in week 17.
Yeah. But I think there's a whole lot of hope for him this
Yeah,
upcoming year.
next year, I
I
mean,
really
if
do.
you go back and look at the tape of this last season and you compare him to Monty, it's like, oh man, it's really cool when Monty fights for yards, but Gibbs just gets extra yards because he's that much
Yeah.
better than everyone else.
Gibbs is just electric. When he
And
gets
in the
on the field,
playoffs,
gets the ball, and oh,
in the playoffs, he was disgusting. I mean, they only lost because their kicker's awful and they didn't want to kick field goals. But, granted, he sucked. But in the playoffs against the Rams, you have 8 attempts for 25 yards, so not his game, but a tutty, and then 4 receptions for 43 yards. You get 18 points. That's not a bad fantasy outing. Then you follow that up with Tampa Bay. You get 9 rushes for 74 yards, a tutty, 4 receptions again for 40 yards. And then you
yeah,
have 12 rushes, 45 yards, a tutty against San Francisco, and then 3 receptions for 11 yards. I think putting
yeah.
up double-digit points on San Francisco defense is always a fantasy win when it comes to running backs. But so it wasn't electric, but
Yeah.
he's shown, and when you're watching him in the playoffs, he looked that much better than everybody else, and it
Hmm.
wasn't close.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think if you picked up Bijan Robinson over Jahmyr Gibbs last year, I think you're regretting it now.
Might regret it. Yeah,
I
this season.
think they might regret it. Just with the scheme that they have, with how much they love Gibbs, oh man, he's gonna get utilized next year. He
But
really
on
is.
the other side of that coin, Raheem Morris is probably going to use Bijan
Yeah,
very.
yeah. But at least through this first year, I think Gibbs has the upper hand right now. And
Yeah,
it's up to Bijan to make up that gap because it's going to take a lot of work for Bijan to look better than Jahmyr Gibbs that did this year. So, you know, let's go ahead and move on to Josh's answer. So, who helped Josh in the playoffs? I mean, other than CMC, there was only one other person. Who was that one person?
that he liked in the playoffs.
MVP this year.
Oh yeah, Lamar. Well, you gave it away with that. I was going to say Lamar
Yeah.
liked other than CMC.
So, I mean, Lamar Jackson, he scared the ever-living bejesus out of me during the championship. When he was scoring touchdown after touchdown, I mean, get this stat line. 21 attempts, 18 completions, 321 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Like off of 18 completions, 321 yards.
Yeah,
That's ridiculous. So, and then he added another 6 carries for 35 yards. But he ended up scoring 40 plus points
I think it was
in
43.
the championship. No, it was 40.54
Oh,
points. And that's that's crazy. For the championship, he scared the ever-living bejesus out of me because I didn't think that he would actually do it. I didn't think he could score that much. So he made it somewhat of a close game for me in my head. But yeah, he kind of carried Josh through the postseason, scoring 21, 23, and then 40 points through the postseason. So
yeah.
that's crazy. But okay, so let's go ahead and go into next year. Next year, optimism. Who who do you see on your team that
I
has the
have a
most
lot.
potential?
This is where I'm going to talk the most.
Okay, okay. All right. Now remember, keep it somewhat brief.
Yeah.
But who do you think has the most potential? To me, I've got two people.
Hmm.
Uh, Kyle Pitts, Arthur Smith can't hurt him anymore. Um, and
Raheem Morris said he liked
hopefully,
Bijan and Drake.
yeah, and hopefully there's a new QB on the Falcons this year. Hopefully,
The report just
um,
came out earlier. Glad you mentioned that. Justin Fields is
yeah,
heavily linked to the Falcons.
yeah. So there's a decent chance that there is a new QB, a new signal caller over there. So we'll see. Um, and then my second one is Ty Chandler. Um, I think he looked better than Madison out on the field. I really do. Just throughout the year when he was given chances, I think he looked a little more explosive than Alexander Madison. Um, but we don't know what the Vikings are going to be doing at running back this offseason. They could end up drafting a running back, in the second or third round, picking up somebody. They could. I know one running back that's been linked to the Vikings that I don't think is possible, but apparently he's been linked and there's rumors. But Saquon Barkley
Hmm.
potentially could end up at the Vikings, which would be a huge boon for us. I think he's a very talented running back if he stays healthy, but
Which he has
I don't
been.
know.
He has been for the
I
last
mean,
few
he
years.
has been, yeah, he has been as of late, but he has that history, and that's what I'm concerned with.
Yeah.
Um, but those are kind of my two that I see with the most potential. I really hope Kyle Pitts comes out and just demolishes next year because that would give me, two tight ends that are solid picks, like that I could, if push comes to shove, end up trading one of them, and getting a little more draft capital for next season. But I would love to see Kyle Pitts go back to his year one form where he was a what, 1,000 yard uh tight
Receiver.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000 yard receiver. So I would love to see that. So we'll see. We'll see about that. But those are the only two that I see like huge potential for like gain.
All right.
So
Let's
all
let's
right.
let's get this
All
right
right, go ahead.
because this is all I have. Um, but Tank Dell. So we've got him, and biggest games for him are his 30-point performances
Hmm.
against Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Arizona. Um, I mean, just depending on how he comes back, uh, it's kind of up in the air. It could go either direction, but the chemistry he had with CJ was unmatched. So if
Yeah.
that stays up, I'm a big fan of Tank Dell. Um, then going on to Pacheco, he's the bell cow of Kansas City. I think they're going to come out and be a little bit more run heavy next year with just how
Hmm.
putrid their receiving game has been. I mean, they're going to take a shot at a wide receiver, but they need to be
They have to.
a run heavy offense. And his injuries are what kept him at running back 15.
Yeah.
So I think next year he can creep into the top 10 and he might be a sneaky good running back next year.
Pacheco, yeah, for sure.
Um, then I have Gibbs, and we've kind of already talked about him, so I won't spend too much time, but just he's electricity in a bottle, and I'm very
Yep.
excited to watch him next year. And then the last guy I had is actually Zamir White. Um,
Okay.
it really feels like he's taking over for Josh Jacobs. Um, and he's been very efficient about it. So you have the week 15 performance against the Chargers, 20 points. He got 17 carries, 69 yards, a tutty, three receptions, 16 yards. Then you move on to week 16 at Kansas City, 21 points, 22 carries, 145 yards. So that's without getting a touchdown. And then you have week 17 against Indy, 20 points, 20 carries, 71 yards, five receptions, 35 yards. So it all depends on what happens to Josh Jacobs. But the feeling I'm getting is Josh Jacobs isn't going to be staying with the Raiders. And when you have Zamir White on a rookie deal who's putting up those numbers, why would you pay for Josh Jacobs? When you have a younger guy that can put up, I will argue that down the stretch, he put up better numbers than Josh Jacobs. Why are we paying for
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs? How do you make those numbers make sense? Unless you're saying, we have the money that we can just burn and don't need to pay for somebody else and we can have a two running back system. I mean, okay, that's going to hurt both of their fantasy values,
Yeah.
but and I don't know why you'd be burning your money on a running back when you have a kid on a rookie deal. This is a fat class of running backs. You can get another talented running back on a rookie deal and cut him loose and spend that money somewhere else from a
Yeah.
real world perspective, not a fantasy perspective. So, and that's
Hmm.
just me. That's just my opinion. My opinions have been wrong. My opinions have been right. I'm not
Yes, they
saying,
have been.
oh, I'm 100% spot on about this, but I've got a itch, Ryan. Got an
Oh,
itch.
you've got an it. You should probably get that checked out.
Well, that's what the therapy is for, right? You can look at this, right, Doc?
Yeah, you should probably have a doctor talk about that
Oh, well,
or take a look at that for you. Um, okay. All right. I see a lot of potential with all of that. Especially, Zamir White, I like him next year. I do, especially if they don't re-sign Josh Jacobs. Say they bring
oh,
in, another running back in this
well,
off
draft.
season.
Just draft.
I really like Zamir White. He looked really good. It was on and off, but he looked good. So he could be a potential replacement for Josh Jacobs.
He
Um,
is. No, he's not a potential replacement. He is a replacement for Josh Jacobs,
well, because they
and
don't
he's
want
shown
to
it.
re-sign Josh Jacobs, and at least for what Josh Jacobs is worth and what Josh Jacobs wants. So
versus,
Yeah,
and
I get
then
that.
you have to look at Zamir. You want, let's say 16, 17 mil a season. We have Zamir for 2 more years on his rookie contract,
Yeah,
and we don't have to blow that. We can spend that somewhere else. And Raiders need
yeah,
help in other places than at running back.
yeah,
Why would you keep him? Let Josh Jacobs go find another team. He'll
yeah,
still be good wherever he goes, whether it's like the Vikings or somewhere else. But
yeah, yeah. And I'm hoping we don't pick up Josh Jacobs. I'm all right with it. If it happens, cool. I'd rather pick up a rookie in this draft and then like pick up a quarterback round one, running back round two or three, and then defense the entire way. But I don't think we should. I don't think we should sign Josh Jacobs. I'd rather sign Saquon Barkley than Josh Jacobs. But
well, let's finish off with
moving on to Josh's. Um, there is three people that he has listed on here: Zay Flowers, JMO, so Jamison Williams, and Chase Brown. So I mean, I don't necessarily see Chase Brown, but I understand the other two. His reasoning on Chase Brown, he he believes that it is Mixon's replacement.
no.
Um, since he can still run the ball to be successful, and he showed the ability to catch out of the backfield. But I just don't see him being an equivalent to Mixon. I really don't. I think Mixon is on another level than Chase Brown. Maybe it's just developmental, and he just hasn't developed into that type of running back or that level of running back. But I do not think Chase Brown is at that same level. I don't
Oh my
necessarily
gosh.
agree with it. I
He
think
said
there
Zay
is,
Flowers is going to be wide receiver one next year.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
What a
I think
home
wide receiver. No, no, no. I think wide receiver one on the
on
Ravens,
Baltimore. Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, on yeah, Baltimore. But I don't think wide receiver one in fantasy. I don't
Okay.
think that's
Yeah. With
good
that
at all.
clarification, that's a much better statement.
Yeah,
Saying Zay Flowers
yeah.
wide receiver
If
next
I
year.
mean, if he thinks he'll be wide receiver one in fantasy, I
Oh,
think
oh
he's
boy.
on something right now. We
Oh,
should definitely go check Josh, make sure he's all right. But I do
wide
think he'll
receiver
he'll be
one
all right.
on the Ravens.
Um, Jamison Williams is my
That's
biggest
solid.
fear.
Yeah.
Is my biggest fear for Sun God because he started to take some of those targets away from Amon Ra later on in the season. He started to look pretty good, especially with the deep ball. Um, so I I don't I don't like Jameson Williams. I mean, I like him as a player, he's individually, but me personally, because I think he's going to take away from Amon Ra, I don't like it.
I mean,
Um, but
Amon
I
Ra
think
was
he
still
is the
super solid in the playoffs. 9 targets,
yeah,
7 receptions, 110 yards.
yeah,
14 targets, 8 receptions, 77 yards a tutty. 11 targets, 7 receptions, 87 yards.
yeah.
Like, I don't think in the
He
passing game he's going to take much away from Sun God.
Yeah, but it's those deep shots
He's
that
going to
he
get,
gets because Amon Ra
yeah.
gets a lot of the cross field
But if
push
you
stuff.
if you give up 2 to 4 targets that are just deep down the field and he catches maybe one or two of them and gets a touchdown, but he gets all of the other receptions and is still
Yeah,
very reception heavy, that doesn't matter.
yeah. But who knows? Like he had a pretty solid season for I mean
Uh,
it's his stats
we'll,
on here,
we'll,
zero games
on that.
above 70% of snaps.
We'll, we'll,
So
we'll,
he's not
let
on
it,
the field for a majority of the game.
we'll let it go on that.
But yeah, we'll let it go on that. But uh, he could end up eating into Amon Ra's snap count, or not necessarily snap count or target count, but um, I think he's a good player. I think he has a lot of potential. Um, okay, so I didn't put anything on this question. Um, the question is, how do you feel about your team? Um, for me, I know the changes that I need to make for this upcoming season, and mainly rookies and uh, running backs. Those are my two weaknesses right now. My quarterbacks, tight ends, everything looks good to me, other than my running backs, and that's mainly what I need to work on. Um, but with me winning the championship this year, I don't have a lot to complain about.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I had a good season. I got lucky a lot, especially in the postseason. Um, but I I really am happy with how my season has gone, and I feel hopeful for this upcoming season. I don't know if I'm going to win a second championship this year, but I know there's potential. So,
I
what
hope for
about
the
you?
sake of the league you don't. That would be unbearable. Um, I mean, for my team, we're just really young. We're young and there's a lot of potential there, but it's about seeing what's gonna actually pan out and what's not. Like
Yeah,
Gibbs, Tank Dell, ETN, Pacheco, a lot of potential there. You throw in JT, potential, Pittman, potential. So we'll see. We're gonna
yeah,
need some Jared Goff stability though, but overall the future isn't bleak, but
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see where the winds take us. The church.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And kind of a response from Josh. He kind of listed some pros and cons. But he also commented and said, "Eh, I don't know. Ask me after the draft." So he's got a crap ton of draft picks this year.
He has
I
so
think
many
he has like 5 or 6 second round
obscene.
draft picks. He is dominating this upcoming draft. Like,
Oh,
let's
missed
go and see.
opportunity to win the series. He's going through it. Josh is going through it.
Yeah, he's got a first round pick, 4 second round picks, a third round pick, and 2 fourth round picks, and then 2 first round picks next year, 3 second round picks next year. He's he's stacked on draft picks for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So I envy him. But so he listed pros, missed opportunity to win this year. Yep, stolen by me. Um, he has a lot of draft capital
Yep.
available,
Ryan, the
and
team squad booty bandits.
yeah, there you go. I'll change my team name to Booty Bandits this year. But some stars like CMC and Lamar, and then some young stars like Olave, Zay Flowers, Debo Samuel. And then some cons, and this is something that we pointed out in the
These
regular
these
season. He
cons are
has
really
no
big.
he has no depth,
Yeah.
but that can be erased by this upcoming draft because
And next year,
he has a lot. Yeah, he has a
but
lot of
but
of
Ryan,
what?
here's the thing though. He has a lot of
What?
picks, but if they don't hit, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
He has
yeah,
to hit on
he
his
has
draft.
to hit.
If he does
But
not,
it gives him a much better chance to hit. So he has no depth, he has aging stars, and then there's a questionable future for some of his players,
yeah,
like
but
AJ
I mean his
Brown, Kelsey,
ages,
Kamara,
his
and
ages
Debo.
are rough. Like AJ Brown, that's a rough age. Kelsey's a rough age. Kamara's a rough age. Debo is
Yeah,
kind of heading towards the end of wide receiver prime. Like
yeah,
he's
yeah,
he's got some rough roster situation.
yeah. So, we don't really know what's going to happen. He's got a lot of talent,
Yeah,
but will it last into the end of this year, the end of this
it's
upcoming
fantasy
2024
football.
season? Yeah,
That's
that's fantasy.
and that's a therapy session.
And that is our therapy
You've
session.
been
We
therapized.
are we are done, y'all. Thank you for listening. And we really appreciate everything you guys do, all the comments, and just sitting here and listen to us vent about our
Pop
fantasy
our
season.
gums.
So we appreciate you guys. Make sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube and on wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Follow us on there. You can follow us on all of our social media at Last Place FP, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of them. Be sure to follow us. Ethan, go ahead.
Never forget. Sometimes you're right.
Sometimes you're
Sometimes
the
you're right.
champion.
We'll see y'all next
Sometimes
season.
you're the champion. That's right.